Hey everyone, my name is Vici Jagannathan. I'm one of the co-founders of Rural Opportunity Institute, and just making this video to share an update of the work that we've been doing around adverse childhood experiences and trauma here in Edgecombe County, North Carolina. And essentially our goal here has been for the last year or so to bring together community members across different systems, so that's school, health, law enforcement, justice, faith, business, and a number of other community members, to collectively understand the forces in our community that contribute to high levels of unaddressed trauma, and then to identify the highest leverage ways that we can intervene, where a change in the way that we do things could have outsized impact on disrupting these forces. So our goal ultimately as a community is to move from a society that punishes and isolates people for their trauma to one that provides healing and self-determination through access to healthy relationships. The first area in the map that really arose as a high leverage place to start is around this idea of increasing knowledge about how providers across different systems can begin to recognize what the symptoms of trauma and toxic stress look like, and then examine how they're currently responding and what might be better ways of responding to provide more healing. So one of the big takeaways here was that there are already bright spots in the community of places where people are being trained in how to become more trauma-informed and healing. Good examples are many of the schools have done training, some of the different health providers have received training, but really we see that people are showing up everywhere across different systems with law enforcement, the justice system, in communities, in families, experiencing and seeking support for dealing with trauma. And so there's a lot of energy currently around figuring out how we can train more of those people across systems so that we're all speaking the same language, we're all looking for the same things, and we're all providing the same types of positive responses. And so if you look in the systems map, the hope here is that by starting with increasing knowledge and resources, we can have a lot of downstream effect on things like providing a better fit of treatment, building more supportive community networks for individuals who experience trauma and toxic stress, and also reducing the consequences for failure, both for people experiencing trauma and also those who are providing healing. By doing this, we expect that as people build their awareness of how to recognize trauma and toxic stress, they will also start to demand more restorative options rather than the current options of punishment and isolation that seem to be the default. So the hope here is to then look at where are the places where there already are restorative options, and can we shift those towards being the default and create more opportunities for people to get funneled into those healing environments so that they can build soft skills and resilience and reduce punishment and isolation. And so up here on the systems map, the real goal here is to, when people are experiencing toxic stress or showing negative coping behaviors, push them towards solutions that involve supportive community networks, healthy relationships, and opportunities to practice and build new skills rather than just being punished, isolated, and then further experiencing toxic stress. And finally, even now, oftentimes when people do experience these restorative options, they ultimately head back to job or school, and often those environments aren't necessarily set up to support them in continuing to grow and heal and build self-determination. And so the third step here is really partnering with local employers, the school system, to understand how they best can support people in reintegrating into those environments and being able to continue to build positive habits and heal and ultimately move forward. And so this is kind of the last part of the cycle here of folks coming out of these positive options, then having the opportunity to continue to build and develop social, emotional, and soft skills, and ultimately progress beyond the educational and employment options that they currently have. Long term, the goal and the hope is that a prevalence of this type of healing response will lead to a critical mass of individuals in the community who may have been impacted by trauma at some point, but have been given the opportunity to heal and build resilience, and ultimately can become the healers and a source of healthy relationships and support for others in the community who may be going through the same thing. So this is really that idea of building the capacity of many of these untapped non-traditional leaders, so that ultimately the community has the ability to self-heal and break these generational cycles of poverty and trauma. So in terms of the very first step that we are taking towards building on this kind of broader long-term strategy, we're really looking to make moves on this idea of training and increasing knowledge. And to that end, our first step this summer is as a community to build a training collaborative that are really focused on how we can start implementing this. One of the reasons we're excited is that if you look around the country, there already are really great trainings for trauma, toxic stress, and building resilience that have been deployed with success in many different communities. The exciting thing is that this type of training on a wide scale has never been done in a rural majority African American community. And so our hope is to kind of learn from all the people that have already done it and then make adaptations and shifts for it to work in our community. One of the main challenges we've heard from speaking with a lot of the other people that have done these trainings already is that the existing training is really designed only for certain audiences, folks like these institutional leaders, education, health, and often the content is really academic. And a lot of the interest in our community is to really make sure that that training and that knowledge is reaching everyone, including families and communities, and not just those at the institutions. So one of the key roles for this collaborative will be a lot of this translation and trying to figure out how we can take what exists already and make sure it works both for institutions, but also for families. At a high level, our hope is that this will give us something as a community that we can come together around and start to show results. Thus far, we've done a lot of research and a lot of understanding of the problem, and we really want to move towards what we can accomplish if we work together. We recognize that in order for us to have different results in terms of how this training is deployed, we need to have different people at the table, and specifically, not just institutional leaders, but also the communities and families that have the knowledge of how we can best design this training to reach everyone. Some of the specific questions this group will answer are questions around ownership, moving forward, how will this group be governed, as well as some really key strategic and tactical questions of who needs to be trained first, for whom does the existing training already work, and then where are the places where we can partner locally to make this more wide scale, and also what needs to be potentially created or redesigned so that our training is reaching everyone. These initial questions will be answered over the next 8 to 9 weeks with this smaller training collaborative. And then at that point, we'll sort of reevaluate where we are and then continue to evolve and keep this work moving forward. Thanks again for taking us or joining us on this journey. And if you are local to Edgecombe County and want to become involved in the training collaborative, we'd love to hear from you. And separately, always open to questions from anyone. Or suggestions if you've done some similar work. So please don't hesitate to read more about us or reach out to us directly if you want to talk more. Thanks a lot.